The author, Noemi Johnsonova, is a Czech student who completed her bachelor's degree in English language and literature at the Faculty of Education, Charles University, Univerzita Karlova, in Prague in 2023. Her thesis, Escaping Babylon: History and Therapeutic Effects of Music at the Rainbow Gatherings, reflects both academic and personal engagement with countercultural and communal movements. She conducted ethnographic fieldwork by attending multiple rainbow gatherings, interviewing participants, and drawing from her own experiences within the community. Her writing shows a strong interest in the intersection of art, psychology, and social movements, combining scholarly research on art therapy and psychoanalysis with real-world cultural study. Her acknowledgement suggests she approaches her work with deep empathy, curiosity, and gratitude toward the rainbow community that inspired her research. This is a 2023 bachelor's thesis that looks at rainbow gatherings, month-long, leaderless camps in nature, and explains, in plain terms, how their simple communal music-making, singing circles, drumming, dancing, mantras about peace, love, and Mother Earth, helps people unwind from the stress and alienation of modern consumer life, the community calls Babylon. Drawing on psychology, art therapy, sublimation, neurosis, sociology, collective effervescence, the movement's history and organization, consensus councils, healing rules, shared kitchens, plus the author's own fieldwork and interviews, it argues that these gatherings work like informal group therapy, by creating a supportive, non-commercial space where everyone participates in repetitive, acoustic, body-involving music. People can safely express themselves, feel connected, and temporarily detox from everyday pressures, turning inattention into shared, restorative creativity. In the introduction of Escaping Babylon, Noemi Johnsonova explains that her thesis explores how the Rainbow Family of Living Light, a global, non-commercial community that gathers in nature, uses music and art as forms of therapy and healing. She outlines her methodology, which combines academic research with her own fieldwork and interviews from attending several rainbow gatherings. Because there's little scholarly material on this topic, her observations and participant experiences form a major part of the study. The introduction also explains that the thesis connects the rainbow movement's culture and values with psychological theories like art therapy, sublimation, and neurosis, examining how creative expression helps individuals process emotion and escape the stress of modern capitalist life, or Babylon. In short, she sets out to show that rainbow music and art are not just cultural expressions, but therapeutic tools for personal and collective healing. In Art as Therapy, the thesis explains how creating art can help people process emotions, relieve psychological tension, and achieve healing. Drawing on early psychoanalytic ideas, especially Freud's concept of sublimation, where inner urges or anxieties are redirected into creative expression, the author traces the development of art therapy from its roots in studying the artwork of psychiatric patients to its modern use as a recognized therapeutic practice. She highlights how art allows people to communicate unconscious feelings symbolically, often more easily than through words, and how this process can lead to emotional balance and self-understanding. The chapter also discusses neurosis, a range of stress-related mental states, and connects it to how people use creativity to cope with inner or societal pressures. Overall, it sets up the idea that artistic creation, especially in communal, emotional settings like the rainbow gatherings, acts as a healthy release and transformation of psychological distress. Chapter 3 of Escaping Babylon explores the rainbow gatherings in depth, presenting them as temporary, leaderless communities that form in nature as a living expression of the Rainbow Family of Living Light's ideals. These gatherings, which began in 1972 near Aspen, Colorado, grew out of the hippie and folk festival movements of the 1960s. They aim to create a space free from hierarchy, money, and the pressures of modern life. Over time, rainbow gatherings spread beyond North America to Europe and other parts of the world, becoming an international movement rooted in peace, love, unity, and respect for nature. One of the central forms of rainbow events is the Healing Gathering, a space designed for physical and emotional detox, from what participants call Babylon, a term they use to describe modern consumer society and its spiritual emptiness. Healing gatherings often encourage participants to abstain from alcohol, meat, drugs, and caffeine, not as a rule, but as a way to purify the body and mind. The focus is on personal accountability, simplicity, and collective care. These gatherings embody the belief that the fast-paced, materialistic world creates a kind of societal neurosis, and that by living together in harmony with nature, people can recover a sense of balance and authenticity. Johnsonova traces the movement's origins to the hippie generation and its rejection of violence and capitalism, but highlights that the Rainbow Family differs from its predecessors by discouraging drug use. For most participants, intoxication symbolizes Babylon's addiction to consumption and escape. However, natural substances such as cannabis or mushrooms are accepted by some as spiritual tools. While the movement borrows ideas from Rastafari, Native American traditions, and other world religions, it remains non-religious and inclusive, welcoming people of all faiths and identities as long as they share the values of peace and community. The organization of the gatherings reflects their philosophy. There are no leaders, managers, or paid roles. Anyone can take the initiative to focalize a gathering by finding a natural site and spreading the word, traditionally by pamphlet or word of mouth and now often online. Volunteers build a seed camp, the basic infrastructure including the kitchen, main fire, and latrines. The guiding principle is simple. If you see a job, it's yours. Everyone contributes according to their ability, whether cooking, maintaining the site, fetching wood or water, or leading workshops. Money is replaced by voluntary donation through a magic hat ritual, where participants give coins or symbolic gifts that fund food supplies for the community. Daily life at a rainbow gathering centers around communal rituals, especially the food circle. Meals are prepared twice a day, and before eating, everyone gathers around the main fire to sing together in a circle. These songs of gratitude and unity act as both social bonding and spiritual practice, transforming an ordinary meal into a collective celebration of life and the earth's generosity. After eating, the magic hat is passed to collect small donations, accompanied by a traditional song. Through these routines, the community cultivates mindfulness, gratitude, and interdependence, values often lost in the hurried, individualistic rhythm of Babylon. Decision-making at rainbow gatherings happens through open councils, not authority. Anyone can participate in discussions, which are held in circles and guided by a talking stick. Whoever holds the stick may speak while others listen. The goal is to reach consensus rather than vote, so no one's voice is overruled by a majority. When no agreement can be reached, the issue is simply left unresolved, preserving equality among all members. A special vision council takes place annually to decide where the next large gathering will be held. This process of collective self-governance reinforces the rainbow ideal of living peacefully and cooperatively without formal power structures. The chapter concludes by unpacking the meaning of Babylon, a central idea in rainbow philosophy. The term, borrowed from Rastafarian culture, originally referred to oppressive colonial powers, but in rainbow thought represents modern capitalist society, marked by greed, control, and alienation from nature. Interviews conducted by the author reveal that most participants see Babylon not only as a system, but as a state of mind characterized by materialism, conformity, and disconnection. Escaping Babylon, therefore, is both a social and spiritual act, creating an alternative way of living that emphasizes freedom, creativity, love, and respect for the earth. In essence, Chapter 3 portrays rainbow gatherings as intentional, temporary utopias where people experiment with community, therapy, and spiritual renewal. They replace money with sharing, authority with consensus, and consumption with creativity. Through music, ritual, and collective living, the gatherings offer participants a chance to heal from the mental and emotional toll of Babylon and experience what life might feel like if society were guided by compassion, equality, and harmony with nature. Chapter 4 of Escaping Babylon focuses on the central role of music within rainbow gatherings, explaining how it serves as both a form of communication and a kind of collective therapy. Johnsonova begins by noting that music is inseparable from the life of the gatherings. It is not entertainment or performance, but an everyday, communal activity that brings people together. Because participants come from all over the world and speak different languages, Music becomes a universal language that bridges cultural and linguistic barriers. Everyone can take part regardless of skill, and participation, whether singing, drumming, or simply listening, is encouraged as an expression of presence, unity, and healing. The music at rainbow gatherings comes from two main sources: borrowed traditions and spontaneous creations. Many songs have their roots in various religions and cultures, such as Native American chants, Christian hymns, Rasta songs, or Quaker spirituals, while others were composed within the rainbow movement and passed along orally. These songs travel globally through gatherings, evolving as people adapt lyrics and melodies to new contexts. For this reason, the rainbow musical tradition is not tied to one culture or place, but forms a kind of global folk repertoire shared across continents. Whether sung in English, Spanish, or another language, the songs typically carry the same messages of love, peace, and gratitude. Johnsonova emphasizes that rainbow music is not commercial or performative. There are no stages, microphones, or professional bands, only acoustic instruments and human voices. This rejection of amplification and recorded music mirrors the community's broader resistance to what it calls Babylon, the noisy, consumer-driven culture of capitalism. The gatherings favor simplicity: drums, guitars, flutes, and natural sounds like the wind or rivers often accompany the music. Pop music and electronic sounds are banned, as they symbolize the artificiality and passivity of Babylon's entertainment culture. Instead, rainbow music is participatory, created together in the moment, reaffirming the idea that everyone is both artist and audience. The author describes how daily life at the gatherings is punctuated by musical rituals, especially the food circle songs that accompany communal meals. Before eating, participants gather around the main fire to sing songs of unity and gratitude, often mantras such as "We are circling together" or "This is family," "This is unity," "This is sacred." These repetitive and simple lyrics help people feel connected, centered, and thankful, turning eating into a mindful, sacred act. After the meal, songs of gratitude follow, like "Thank you for the food," "Thank you for the fire," "Thank you for the friends and the smiles." This ritual not only expresses appreciation, but also strengthens the emotional and spiritual bonds between participants, transforming ordinary actions into acts of collective reverence. Music continues after meals, particularly in the evenings, when people gather around the fire for jam sessions. These sessions are entirely spontaneous. Anyone can start a song, and others join in. Drumming, chanting, and dancing create a rhythmic and emotional energy that often grows into a state of collective trance or ecstasy. The songs are cyclical and repetitive, much like mantras or meditation, which helps participants relax, let go of inhibitions, and merge into the group's rhythm. Those who might have been shy or self-conscious about their voices often find acceptance and confidence through this shared musical experience. The process becomes a form of emotional release and empowerment, echoing principles of art and music therapy where expression transforms inner tension into harmony and relief. The themes of rainbow music revolve around nature, spirituality, peace, and human connection. The earth is often personified as Mother Earth, and many songs express gratitude and reverence for natural elements: wind, water, fire, and trees. Lyrics such as "The earth is our mother," "We must take care of her," or "I find my joy in the simple things that come from the earth," reflect the community's ecological consciousness and its desire to live in balance with the planet. By singing about nature, participants reinforce their sense of belonging to it and their commitment to protecting it. For many, these songs serve as affirmations that reawaken sensitivity to the natural world and counteract the numbness and disconnection fostered by industrial society. Johnsonova also discusses how rainbow music borrows not only melodies but spiritual ideas from other traditions, particularly Rastafarianism, which also uses the term Babylon to describe oppressive modern systems. Just as Rasta songs dream of escaping Babylon and returning to Zion, rainbow songs envision harmony and love as antidotes to capitalism's alienation. However, unlike religious movements, rainbow music is inclusive and non-dogmatic. It blends influences freely, using them as tools for connection rather than doctrine. This creative fusion turns rainbow music into a living, spiritual folk art, a constantly evolving language of resistance, unity, and healing. The chapter ultimately argues that the music of the rainbow is far more than entertainment. It is a therapeutic practice. The act of singing and drumming together produces feelings of belonging, catharsis, and peace, what sociologist Emile Durkheim would call collective effervescence. Through these shared musical moments, individuals temporarily transcend the stress and isolation of Babylon, experiencing instead community, empathy, and joy. In this way, rainbow music embodies the thesis's central claim that through art and collective expression, people can heal from the mental and emotional wounds inflicted by modern society. Chapter 5 of Escaping Babylon, titled A Strife Against Capitalism, explores the deeper social and psychological motivations behind the Rainbow Family's philosophy, especially their rejection of capitalist culture, which they call Babylon. In this chapter, Noemi Johnsonova connects the community's anti-materialist way of life with theories from psychology, sociology, and philosophy to show that the rainbow gatherings are not merely lifestyle experiments, but acts of collective therapy and quiet resistance. Through their music, rituals, and communal living, rainbow participants express both a protest against and a healing response to the mental and emotional distress caused by capitalism. The chapter opens by explaining that the Rainbow Family's ideals are inherently left-leaning and countercultural. Their lifestyle, free from hierarchy, money, and ownership, is an intentional protest against the capitalist system that dominates modern life. Johnsonova links this stance to theories by thinkers such as Bert Olivier and Ian Parker, who describe how capitalism and consumer culture generate anxiety, alienation, and neurosis by constantly demanding productivity, consumption, and competition. In this sense, the Rainbow Family's escape from Babylon is not simply about rejecting mainstream society, but about creating a temporary, therapeutic refuge from its psychological pressures. The gatherings allow participants to step outside the systems of work, money, and control that define everyday existence, and to experience life through cooperation, simplicity, and creativity instead. The section How Capitalism, Babylon, Induces Neurosis develops this argument by drawing from psychoanalytic and sociological perspectives. The author cites Renata Saletzel and others to explain that modern capitalism's obsession with choice and freedom paradoxically produces stress and dissatisfaction. People are overwhelmed by the illusion of limitless choice, what to buy, who to be, how to live, while real freedom remains constrained by economic inequality and social norms. This pressure to constantly choose and achieve fosters anxiety, self-doubt, and alienation from one's true desires. In this framework, Babylon is both an economic system and a psychological condition. Rainbow gatherings serve as an antidote by providing an environment where choice is replaced by spontaneity, where participation is voluntary but meaningful, and where people are valued not for productivity but for being present, creative, and kind. The chapter then turns to folk festivals and art as forms of anti-capitalist expression, showing that the rainbow gatherings descend from the 1960s and 1970s folk movement, which itself was a rebellion against mass culture. Folk festivals originally celebrated community, heritage, and simple living rather than profit or spectacle. Likewise, rainbow gatherings uphold these values by rejecting commercialization and consumerism. Music is not performed for an audience or sold as a product. It is created and shared freely. Johnsonova highlights this as a form of cultural resistance. By refusing to commodify art or labor, the Rainbow Family symbolically defies capitalism's logic of exchange and ownership. Their do-it-yourself ethos, self-sufficient camps, and reliance on sharing embody a collective refusal to live by Babylon's economic rules. In Collective Suffering, the author explores how capitalism's structure causes widespread emotional and spiritual distress that manifests as what sociologist Melvin Seaman calls alienation. Seaman describes alienation as consisting of 5 experiences: powerlessness, meaninglessness, normlessness, isolation, and self-estrangement. Johnsonova argues that these experiences are symptoms of life under capitalism, where people are cut off from nature, each other, and their own creativity. This shared malaise, what she calls collective suffering, is one of the reasons people seek out the rainbow gatherings. There, they find a space to reconnect, express emotions openly, and transform their personal pain into shared healing through music and art. The gatherings become a living response to social trauma, allowing individuals to reclaim a sense of agency and belonging lost in the mechanized routines of Babylon. The next section, The Resistance to Collective Suffering, expands this idea through the lens of art therapy and social action. Drawing on the theories of Francis F. Kaplan and Dan Hokoy, Johnsonova explains that art therapy can act as both personal healing and social protest. Art created in a collective context not only helps individuals process trauma, but also challenges the social systems that produce it. When rainbow participants sing songs about unity, love, and the earth, or paint, drum, and dance together, they are engaging in what Kaplan calls social action art therapy. Their creative acts are not just therapeutic, they also implicitly criticize the alienation and inequality of capitalist society. The rainbow family's imagery of love, light, and peace becomes a symbolic response to injustice, a visual and musical affirmation of alternative values. The chapter continues by describing community-based art therapy, where collective creativity strengthens bonds and fosters empathy. In such environments, individual expression merges with group identity, transforming private emotions into shared experiences. Johnsonova argues that rainbow gatherings perfectly embody this principle. They are, in effect, temporary art therapy communities where the line between artist and audience disappears. Whether someone is singing, dancing, drumming, or simply listening, everyone participates in the act of healing. The gatherings thus serve as both therapy and resistance, a space where personal well-being and social transformation converge. The final sections explore the connection between these practices and Emile Durkheim's concept of collective effervescence, the intense emotional unity that arises when people gather in shared ritual. Through song, dance, and drumming, rainbow participants enter states of joy, catharsis, and transcendence that dissolve the boundaries between self and others. These experiences offer temporary liberation from the isolation and competition of capitalist life. The author also relates this to Freud's notion of sublimation, the transformation of inner tension or frustration into creative and socially constructive energy. In rainbow gatherings, the pain and anxiety caused by Babylon are sublimated into art, community, and love. In conclusion, Chapter 5 presents the rainbow gatherings as a gentle revolution against capitalism, not through protest or politics, but through creativity, cooperation, and collective healing. They challenge Babylon not by fighting it directly, but by modeling a different way of living, where fulfillment comes from shared experience rather than consumption. Music, art, and communal ritual are the tools of this quiet rebellion, transforming the neurosis of modern life into connection, joy, and meaning. The rainbow family's escape from Babylon is thus both a psychological process and a social statement, a collective effort to reclaim humanity, spirit, and freedom from the machinery of the capitalist world. Sublimation and collective suffering within rainbow ties the rainbow gatherings' creative practices directly to healing shared, not just individual, distress caused by Babylon. The author argues that participants see capitalism's grind as producing a common neurosis. Rainbow life is a collective social action that offers relief rather than a literal plan to replace society. Attendees openly admit they still depend on the outside world, and know the gathering's utopia is temporary, but they deliberately create images and rituals, songs of love, earth, unity, that function like shared daydreams, transforming an unsatisfactory reality into hopeful, therapeutic symbols, echoing Freud's link between creativity and daydreaming. Group singing is presented as a powerful, low-barrier path to sublimation. Interviews describe shy singers gaining confidence. Because the rainbow norm is non-judgment and sharing, people who once avoided singing often end up leading circles. The voice is treated as a mirror of emotion and trauma, so using it in a supportive group helps release tension and rebuild self-trust. Abundant instruments and peer teaching make skill less important than participation. Dance emerges organically around the fire, often barefoot to drums, and draws in even those who usually avoid moving in public. The text links this to dance/movement therapy ideas. Body and mind are one. Our emotional history lives in posture and movement. Motor expression lets unconscious feelings surface and discharge. Rainbow's accepting atmosphere turns movement into a cathartic, confidence-building practice, another channel for sublimation. Improvisation. Across singing, playing, and moving, spontaneity is prized. Creative acts are ideally unrehearsed, springing from inner feeling. This immediacy is said to foster more honest self-expression and thus stronger therapeutic effect. Drumming and trance digs into why percussion matters. Drawing on ethnomusicologist Gilbert Rouget, it frames trance as an altered state of consciousness with both psychophysiological and cultural components. Drumming's low, patterned, repetitive pulses are singled out. Intermittent acoustic stimuli with bass-heavy spectra can drive brain rhythms in the alpha band, about 8 to 13 Hz, helping induce trance-like absorption. In nomadic, low-tech rainbow settings, where amplification and pop music are shunned, participants lean on hand drums, clapping, and stomping. The resulting grooves often usher individuals into focused, ecstatic states that feel liberating and restorative. Stepping back, the author links these modalities, singing, dancing, improvising, drumming, to a shared endpoint, moments of release that ease anxiety and depression and frequently peak in a group high akin to Durkheim's collective effervescence. Because the suffering they address is widely shared, life under Babylon, the healing is also collective. Art becomes the vehicle for sublimation at the level of the group, not just the individual. The conclusion brings the entire thesis together by reaffirming its central argument, that rainbow gatherings function as a form of art therapy and collective healing. The author set out to demonstrate how these gatherings serve as an escape from the pressures of consumerist and capitalist society, what participants call Babylon, and how the act of creating and sharing art, especially music, helps people transform their stress and emotional turmoil into something positive through sublimation. To reach this conclusion, the thesis first traced the history of both the rainbow movement and art therapy, then described how gatherings are organized and what daily life, songs, and rituals look like, and finally analyzed how these practices affect participants psychologically and emotionally, using both academic sources and first-hand interviews. The author concludes that rainbow gatherings essentially operate as a form of loose, community-based group therapy. Through singing, drumming, dancing, and other creative acts, participants express themselves freely, connect with others, and experience cathartic release in a setting built on acceptance and cooperation. This shared artistic experience helps relieve neurosis and anxiety caused by life in modern capitalist systems. The gatherings thus represent both a personal and social transformation, a temporary yet powerful alternative to the stress, isolation, and materialism of Babylon. Ultimately, the thesis argues that the rainbow family's music and rituals are not just cultural practices, but tools of healing and renewal that allow people to rediscover peace, unity, and authenticity.